all the countries that are currently at war, at some stage they will stop. They will be exhausted, or they will lose the war, one side or the other, or there will be reasons to stop the fighting. What happens then when the war stops? Well, somebody needs to clear all the unexploded ordnance and the bombs and the ammunitions and the landmines. Otherwise you cannot rebuild the country. One of the first projects, I don't know if it was really the first, was in Sarajevo, but was for me a key project. When visiting the city of Sarajevo after the war, part of the city had started to rebuild. And there was a whole part of the city called the Brinja, where no one really did reconstruction. So I went there and asked, what's going on here? They said, no, it's mine, we can't touch this part of the city. And this was a part of the city that could be seen from the international airport of Sarajevo. And I came back with this idea to my friends, and we met, and I said, well, here is a first project, let's do that. And I see the sign, we have a sign, it's visible from the airport where we are going to work. And so we did. So we basically raised about 30,000 Swiss francs. Yeah, from friends, family, the grandmother, and whoever gave a little bit of money. And that was our first success. And we put a panel there, Fédération Suisse de Déminage, that could be seen from the airport. And we had pictures, and we started to raise funds and said, we have a first project, it's real. That's how it started. Now, looking back, of course, this all seems very naive and yes, a very basic approach. But yes, it helped us to start up, and it helped us to get some traction and to get some momentum. But then we, notably Henri Leu, the founding board member Henri Leu, approached the World Food Programme. And they were very keen to have a standby capacity, because very often in their work they were hampered by mines. So they wanted to distribute food or build warehouses in countries at war or after the war. And they said, well, we are scared, our staff might get hurt. So we started providing experts to the World Food Programme just to keep them safe. And this led to a standby agreement, and it is a standby agreement that is still in force, and we still have a very large cooperation with the World Food Programme. Currently we are demining for them in Ukraine. But then we started to work also with other international organizations. Humanitarian demining is driven on one hand by the needs. And yeah, I think about 100 countries on the planet have a problem with landmines or unexploded ordnance. Not all are totally mined. Some have a small problem, some have a very large one. But in these 100 countries, maybe there are 20 countries where humanitarian demining happens, and in the others, nothing happens. So the main criteria for can we work or can we not work is somebody providing the money. We are just one of many organizations. We do what we can, but we can only do as much as we have resources for. And this is, of course, largely insufficient with regards to the needs. The needs would be overwhelming.